February 24, 1999, the 9th day of the Chinese New Year, Chengdu Shuangliu International Airport. A Southwest Airlines Tu154 airliner is waiting to take off from the airport. The plane is flying a direct flight from Chengdu to Wenzhou. The flight number is SC4509. There are 50 passengers and 11 crew members on board. The weather is as clear as a blue paper. People were still immersed in the joy of Chinese New Year. At 14:35, flight 4509 was cleared for takeoff by the tower. It started to speed up and smoothly leave the path and take off as usual. Everything seemed to be going so smoothly. If there is no accident, flight 4509 will arrive at Wenzhou Longwan International Airport in 2 hours. Wenzhou Longwan International Airport. Direct flight to this flight. The configuration of the crew is very luxurious. Captain Yao Fushan and co-pilot Shuangliu, both of them have over 4,000 hours of flight experience. It is reasonable to say that with such a flight configuration, there is very little chance of an accident occurring. These crew members did not let their experience, they did not take this unusual mission lightly. After a while, the aircraft climbed smoothly to an altitude of 10,000 meters and successfully turned on the autopilot. The crew began to unbuckle their seatbelts to serve the passengers. For the New Year holidays had just ended, both the crew and passengers were in a good mood. The atmosphere in the entire cabin was very cordial. Everything seems to be normal. But no one expected, the unexpected accident was hidden in this. Under the Harmony 16:01, after a smooth flight of more than an hour, the plane arrived over Shuangliu, Jiangxi province. The atmosphere in the cockpit suddenly became grave because at this moment the crew found the aircraft's operating stick position was a bit abnormal, seems a bit forward at the same time. They also noticed that the plane had a slight head-up sign. The angle of elevation reached more than 20 degrees. However, this situation did not affect the entire aircraft's navigation, but the crew never dared to be sloppy in such matters. To solve this problem, the captain first lowered the altitude of the plane to 7,800 meters. At the same time, he arranged for the flight attendants to guide the passengers. Let some passengers move to the nose of the plane. Increase the weight of the nose of the aircraft to balance the aircraft as much as possible. The sudden change of position caused an uproar among the cabin passengers, but for the sake of safety, everyone is still very cooperative to the position of the front of the aircraft. But even so, the trend of the plane's head-up still did not improve. The captain and co-pilot discussed the aircraft's condition for a more in-depth examination. The crew soon found that the cockpit lever had been in a light and loose state. Something was wrong, that it seemed to be disengaged without being connected properly. Then, the crew contacted the air traffic control department in Wenzhou, requesting to lower the flight altitude to avoid causing more problems. After obtaining permission, the crew immediately performed the relevant operations, trying to lower the altitude of the aircraft. They found that they had no choice but to, even after pushing the stick to the highest position. The plane never obeyed the instructions. What the crew didn't expect at this point was more desperate things were still to come. At 16:30, the plane started to sway uncontrollably from side to side. The passengers in the cabin were screaming from the sudden. The passengers in the cabin were screaming and screaming. Even the body of the crew in the pilot's seat began to shake. The captain noticed. The pilot felt a sense of disconnection of the dampers. Big beads of sweat ran down the captain's cheeks. He didn't have time to wipe it off. Amidst the screams, the plane went completely out of control and began to dive rapidly. All kinds of alarms sounded in the cockpit. Air pressure alerts that he was screaming. The crew is also hissing. The sound was like the last song of life. In just under a minute, the plane disintegrated in the air and crashed in the village of Kashir in Ruyan, Wenzhou. Because of the speed of the fall, when the plane crashed, the ground smashed out a 15-meter diameter, a crater 4 meters deep. The wreckage of the plane was scattered all over the ground, covered with mud. The 50 passengers and 11 crew members of the plane, all the crew members were killed after the accident. The Civil Aviation Administration of China immediately set up an investigation team to investigate the accident. The investigation team ruled out weather operation errors, uniform attack, and other factors. Soon also found the black box has been seriously damaged. The cockpit voice recorded the remains of the crew's conversations, including the captain found the pilot telemetry position too far forward. The nose of the plane kept lifting upward, and the captain's request for passengers and cabin crew to move to the front, adjusting the load structure and other words, one of the captain's remarks, caught the attention of the investigators. The captain said that the nose of the plane would buckle when the throttle was accelerated. Rocker position and rudder surface are not consistent. Could it be that the cause of the plane crash is the cause of the crash in the rocker? Investigators continue to investigate based on the data recorded by the black box. The investigation continues, and after cleaning up the crash site, they found the rudder control system the rudder steering system and other components. The rocker arm above the vertical tail was found to be abnormal. There is a part of the tie rod and rocker arm are connected by self-locking nut, but because the Tu-154 was a Russian aircraft, is an aircraft imported from Russia, so the nut used here should be a curb nut, not a self-locking nut, and not a self-locking nut. This self-locking nut is about 1 mm larger than the Russian. The self-locking nut is about 1 mm larger than the Russian standard nut. The cause of the accident is finally clear. The reason is that it should have used the curb to control the lift of the standard nut. Self-locking nuts were used instead. About 1 mm larger than the commonly used nuts, but this 1 mm error difference became a fatal safety hazard during the flight of the aircraft. ROM had serious problems, resulting in a malfunction of the maneuvering sense. Although the crew tried hard to save, but still could not escape from the disaster. It's a true testament to the difference. Is a mistake of 1,000 me.